My session is about Migrate your .NET Entity Framework, Entity Framework 6 Classic application to .NET 9 and Azure SQL. And my name is Erik Ejskov Jensen, and my social handle is Erik EJ on Blue Sky, GitHub, and many other social media. So what are we going to talk about today? What is the current stack and what is the issues with those for you that are stuck on .NET Framework 4 point something and using Entity Framework 6? What is the solution that I have helped Microsoft creating and how do I get it? We will show a demo of how you can migrate an existing console, .NET Framework console app to .NET 9 and also in the meantime switch your database from a local SQL Express SQL Server instance to use Azure SQL with Entra ID authentication. And hopefully there will be time for a few question and answers at the end. So what is the problem that we're trying to address here? That you're basically stuck with Entity Framework 6 on .NET Framework. I would like to move on. For example, I would like to modernize my applications and take advantage of all the new libraries, performance features, and so on that are available in .NET 9. And being stuck with Entity Framework 6 also means that I can't take advantage of the new security features in Azure SQL Database, like authentication, passwordless authentication with Enter ID, and maybe features like always encrypted, many other features that are, a lot of them relate to security that are available these days in both SQL Server 2022 and of course Azure SQL Database. So the issues with the current provider, the Entity Framework 6 provider, is that it relies on an ADO.NET driver called System Data SQL Client. And it's essentially not maintained anymore. Maintenance stopped with .NET Core 3.1. So any new features that are added to SQL Server will not be added to that driver, leaving Entity Framework 6 in the dust, so to speak. Entity Framework 6 package actually supports running on .NET Standard 2.1. Which is compatible with .NET Framework or .NET 3.1 and later, including .NET 9. But the problem still remains that it's using an old driver that is no longer maintained or have any new features added to it. So the solution is Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server package that I have helped the Entity Framework team push to NuGet. Recently, originally I published my own packet under my Erik EJ publisher, but now it's available as an official Microsoft package called Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server. Let's have a quick look at the docs page for that package on NuGet. So it's a NuGet package that you add to your .NET Framework or .NET application. It supports both .NET Framework for 6 and .NET Standard 2.1, so it will work both with modern .NET and .NET Framework. And this is based on a newer ADO.NET driver called Microsoft Data SQL Client that has the support for all the latest features of SQL Server, new data types, new authentication methods, always encrypted, higher security. Definitely the recommended driver if you are using .NET to speak to SQL Server. The problem was previously to this package that you couldn't do that because the Entity Framework provider relied on System Data SQL Client. So let's go through a demo of what it takes to migrate an existing application from .NET Framework 4.8 to .NET 9, including switching your database from an on-prem SQL Express database to an Azure SQL database. So I will switch to Visual Studio. And here I have an .NET Framework 4.8 application. I'm just going to unload my project file and edit it so you can all see that I'm not cheating. So this is an old school project file, as you can all see, with .NET Framework 4.6.2. Let's reload it. And it has a blocking context, which uses the blocking context connection string from the application configuration file here, and that points to my local SQL Express instance on the blocking database. And then it has a little program, CS console app main program, which shows the current version of shows what is currently in the database, and then it will prompt you to add a new row to the database interactively. So for debugging purposes, I'm actually just going to add some additional information. So we can see the type of provider that we're using by getting the type name of our database connection. I will show you what that means when I run the program for the first time. So right now we are using a local database on my local machine, and to show what is currently in it, I have let's switch to SQL Server Management Studio and have a quick look in the database. Yes, this is SQL Server Management Studio, and yes, I'm running in dark mode. I'm using the latest preview of SQL Server Management Studio. So those of you that use that can now finally, after so many years asking for it, get dark mode and a newer modern shell based on Visual Studio 2022. So this is what is currently in the database. Let's switch back and run the app. So this is our starting point. Oh, what's happening here? Yeah, honest. App. No. Okay, let's just clean that folder here. So there. Open again. And let's run the app. So now I'm bringing up the app, and it's showing that I'm using sorry, I should actually have used full name. So I will add a new entry to the blog list, and then it will list all the data. Let's go back to Management Studio and see that this new row has been added to my local database. So I will stop the app again. I should use full name here. Now we are going to add this package that allows us to use Azure SQL Database, managed identity, and all those other things. So, but initially we will just use the same database, not switch database, but just use the new provider called Microsoft Data SQL Client instead of System Data SQL Client. In order to do that, we need to add a NuGet package, the NuGet package that I just showed you. So let's go and pick that. Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server. Install that to our app. .NET. This is still .NET Framework app, just to be clear. and we will get it installed. Except, so this was installed the new package that uses the new the latest Microsoft provider for SQL Server, and we will see that it's added a lot of stuff to packages config. We can fix that later. And it's also added some redirects to our app config. It is what it is. So we need to do a couple of other things to start using this new provider. So the only remaining thing we need to do is to, on our connection string, change the provider name from System Data SQL Client to Microsoft Data SQL Client. And then we also need to add some code-based configuration of our context. So for each of our DB contexts in our app, we need to add a DB configuration type attribute that refers to the new type that is part of the library called Microsoft SQL Provider, SQL DB configuration. And this will ensure that now the blogging context will use this new provider and the new driver. So in order to adopt the driver, you actually need to make some code changes. This single line of code is the code change that you need to make. And in addition to updating your NuGet references. So let's build the app. Let's build the app and run it again. And you can now see we are now using Microsoft Data SQL Client SQL connection from MES. So we're adding another new block, and you can see here it's listed as being added to the database. Let's trust that. So we can also get rid of some of the configuration sections because we are now using code-based configuration. So we no longer need the entity framework configuration in our app config file. Now we can move to .NET 9. Now we should actually try to use an Azure SQL database with a managed identity from our .NET Framework app. And I have a connection string that points to an Azure SQL database here that I'm going to use instead of the current connection string. It points to an Azure SQL database, and I will just show it to you here. It currently has 2 rows, and it's hosted on my Azure subscription. And a vital point is that I'm using Active Directory default authentication, which allows me to not store any passwords in my connection string, and I will be prompted for my password if I don't already have some cached credentials. Let's save that. Run again. So are we in Azure now? Let's call the new block that. So while this is running, we can go and check the portal. It should be finished very soon. Yes, so now it's listing the data from the database in Microsoft Azure. And let's just run the query here. And you should be able to see the newly added row here. So instead of using our local SQL database, we are now using Azure SQL database with Active Directory, Entra ID or authentication. So, but this app is now at the moment still running .NET Framework. So I have installed an extension called .NET Upgrade Assistant. And with the help of that, I can upgrade my application to use .NET 9. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert my packages config to a package reference. So we don't have so many packages referenced, but just the main package. And this feature, I'm just right-clicking packages config and saying migrate packages config to package reference. And it will pump and determine that the top level package is Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server. So I will use that as my top level package, and it will create, instead of a package packages.config, it will actually create a package reference to this package. So let's save that. And now we can migrate the app itself. It's still running .NET Framework 4.7. And I will use right-click the project, and I can select upgrade. I will do an in-place upgrade, and I can choose .NET 9. I want to upgrade everything. And now it will unload the project and make changes to the project file. And if we open the project file, since this is now has been a .NET project file, I can just double-click the file. You can see it's been upgraded to use .NET 9 on Windows at the moment. I think these package references are actually a little bit superfluous, so let's get rid of them. So the large project file that you saw earlier has now been brought down to this. And it can still read this package enables our .NET app to still be able to read the connection string from the app config. And of course, we probably don't need the simply redirects anymore. I will just leave them for the time being, but probably not needed at all. So let's run this. We now have a .NET 9 Windows app. We are also still using our database in Azure SQL. Yes. So are we using .NET 9 in Azure now? Let's find out in a minute. Let's go to the portal again and run the query. And we should see a new row. So this was from .NET 9 calling up to our Azure SQL database. And we can also go ahead and make this, this is right at the moment, this is for some reason, I'm not sure why, this is a Windows specific app, but it doesn't need to be. We can remove the Windows parts here and it will still run, meaning now we have actually created a cross-platform console app that can run not only on Windows, but Linux and other operating systems. So if we go back to the slide. I hope you realize that with this package, you can move your application migration in stages, initially starting with moving to Microsoft Data SQL Client from your .NET Framework application and take advantage of Azure SQL right away. Then you can move to .NET 9 and continue to use Entity Framework 6. And eventually you can stay on .NET 9 and decide to refactor your data access layer to use EF Core to gain advantage of all the new features in EF Core and the many performance improvements in that updated version of Entity Framework, or rather completely reworked version of .NET Framework. Sorry, Entity Framework. So my actions do, of course, get .NET 9 today. Go and try out my package, and with that, I hope there are some questions from the audience.
Hey, let's go, Eric. Let's get some questions. So, one of the
Yes,
questions that we got, but you already answered for us, is
yes,
relating to Entity Framework 6 being compatible with Net 9, right?
yes, yeah.
So,
So the .NET Framework 6 is a target is dual targeted supports multiple frameworks. And one of the frameworks it supports is .NET Standard 2.1, which corresponds roughly to .NET 3.1. So and due to the backwards compatibility of .NET 9, it works very well with .NET 9. Yes. So yes, you can run EF6, but you don't get a lot of the performance improvements um, because it's the same code base as running on .NET Framework, just executed by .NET 9. Maybe it will run faster. I've never actually tested that. Potentially will run a little bit faster, but
mhm.
you don't get the benefits of the huge performance improvements in EF Core before you actually upgrade to Entity Framework Core or
One last.
refactor your app. Yes.
Oh, no, no, apologies. So one
Yeah,
last
no
question
problem. Yeah.
for you.
Hmm.
One last question related to Entity Framework 6. Do you have any extra tips for the folks that you want to know to use Entity Framework now that you, by the way, congrats on, having collaborating with us to doing that package. That seems incredible. But I want to know
Hmm.
personal tips from the folks that want to implement that in their projects.
Yeah. So follow my README carefully. As I said before, I have released a package under my own prefix on NuGet, and it has been in the market for a couple of years. It's now deprecated and, of course, replaced by this official package. And I have gained a lot of experience from working with that. So, like for example, people that are using, if you're using an EDMX file, you can actually also it's also possible to migrate or to use this package with that and .NET Framework, but you need to make some manual changes in the EDMX file that the designer can't really help you with. And all those changes that you need to make are documented in the README file that comes with a NuGet package. It's also documented on the Entity Framework documentation website. Sorry, they're basically like a copy paste of the README. Another pitfall is people trying to use the designer. It can sometimes fail, and particularly if your designer project is not a .NET Framework project, it probably will definitely fail. So it's important that your designer project that contains the EDMX file remains a .NET Framework project.
Okay.
Basically, if you want to have an EDMX, you need to those parts of your app that has the EDMX need to stay on .NET Framework classic project file.
I see your point there
Yeah.
completely.
Hmm.
And we got a question about for the insiders, which is what is the main hurdles from moving from EF6 to EF core? Why do we need to have that intermediary step?
You don't need to have the intermediary step. I'm just proposing this as a easier way to avoid having a big bang where you change everything. So let's say
Mhm.
you have an existing application, you want to change the UI. Maybe it's a desktop app. You want to change from WinForms to a newer UI framework, and then you have a data access layer. It could be based on a EF6. So is it really a good idea to try and start to change everything? Well, it will definitely take you longer to actually deliver anything. And maybe it's not important for you to change the data access layer immediately because you can
Mhm.
actually live with the performance that you have from it today. Most likely, just by switching to .NET, you will get better performance from .NET Framework. So it's a way of being able to refactor and modernize your app without having to modernize and refactor everything.
Mhm.
In terms of moving from .NET from Entity Framework 6 to Entity Framework Core, it's more or less like starting over because the modeling concepts are completely different in EF Core.
Okay. By the way, before we go, any last things you want to talk to us? Any last tips, messages? We are open to hear you.
Feel free to reach out if you encounter any issues with this solution. As I said before, it has been battle hardened, but there are many ways out there to run Entity Framework 6 that maybe I and maybe even the current EF team has forgotten about. So give the project a try. If you think this is a viable option for being able to move to modern Azure SQL, modern SQL Server, and eventually modern .NET, potentially adding EF Core at the end to the mix.
Gotcha. Eric, thank you so much
You're
for this
welcome.
incredible presentation. And have some fun. Enjoy the rest of .NET Conf 2024.
I certainly will, and you too, Pablo.
See ya.